Welcome to another episode of Lots of a Trillionaire Becoming a Techno Wizard. Just combining these now for most of these episodes. So I started reading the famous polar bear book, Information Architecture for the Web, and it is amazing. Shout out to Debbie for gifting me this book. Thank you so much once again. And I'm only in the introduction, I guess, and it is amazing. Like it's crazy because literally a lot of what it's talking about is exactly why I started. Like I'm trying to start this business idea that I have. So basically, he points out how um, information we have so much information now that we need a way to organize all the information, right? But of course, this is not a new thing. This has been going on for as long as we've been making information. And one of the oldest kind of things he has examples of information architectures is um, it's called I Cheng, I Cheng, Chinese kind of oracle type of thing, where I think that's what it's called. I'm sorry, I'm on Kindle and it has a really bad like design, like it really messes up the what the books look like. But yeah, it's I Cheng, and he was in that one of the stanzas or whatever he was talking about is the well, the water well in a town, how the town may change, may get bigger, smaller over time, may have more people, less people, have different structures around it, but the well at the center always stays the same until we started making all this other stuff. But for a long time, that was a good, architectural thing to keep in mind when you're building cities, when you're building towns, is to have like an anchor point of the town that stays the same no matter how much, the town itself changes. Um, so he's using this metaphorically where he's talking about how information architecture is like the well, is the anchor point of information, of design, of technology. As for instance, when he started making books, before, people didn't really have a way of storing information very well, right? um, Outside of griots and in Africa, different African cultures, and different cultures had oral history and stuff like that. But there was not really, it's not very common for you to write down information and pass it on to other people, right? But when we started having technology to do that, oh, actually, before I get to that part, so they had to write that information down, right? It took a lot of effort to write down whatever knowledge you're trying to pass on. And so that book or that scroll or whatever would be very valuable. So of course, most people didn't read it. Most it was kind of reserved for like higher class, for aristocrats or monks or whatever, specific types of people who would learn how to read and then would read these manuscripts and would store them, right? And it was usually a specific place or a specific way or specific time that you read anything. For instance, one of his examples, in in England, and I guess it is, they the aristocrats, would have an abbey, would have a place where they sat down and read a book, and it was only during a certain time of day, of course, when it's light outside, because you can't read at night. There's no, light, you know, light fixtures and stuff like that, and so it was very rare that you would read a book or anything like that. But when we started having a printing press, right, where you can copy these books, now you have to think about, okay, there's multiple copies of this books. There's a whole bunch more books out, so now you have to figure out where to put all of them. That's how you come up with public libraries and all this other stuff. I'm not. This is not a direct, way of how it happened. There was a whole bunch of other stuff like people had libraries way before printing press, but the idea holds that when you have more information in a system, you have to figure out how to access that information, how to parse that information, and so on and so forth. he's telling the story of these people who are keeping his music. Like I'm not going to recount the whole thing, but basically, you know, before iTunes and digital music, you had vinyl. So all your music, right? You would have an album or songs or whatever on the vinyl disc or whatever they call it, and it will live, on the shelf, right? So in order for you to play that music, first, if you were looking for a song, whatever, you would look at how you organize it, or maybe you didn't organize it, but most of us do, right? Maybe by alphabet, maybe by genre, whatever. You would choose how you organize that information. And then when you looking for that music, that sound, right? You remember, okay, what was the artist's name? Oh yes, this is right. And boom, you pick it up. Simple, relatively. But now in the next generation, like that person's son, for instance, um, has a CD. So it has a bunch of songs in a CD. And when he was growing up, unlike his mother who had to use these vinyl discs and physically take it out, put it in, whatever, on these CDs, when in the early 2000s, when iTunes came out, he can burn or rip these CDs and put it on a digital format. So now he has a whole bunch of music in a digital area. So now it's not as simple as just going to a shelf and picking it up and whatever. You have to go through that list and see, okay, what music do I want to listen to? And in that list, you can now organize it in different ways. It's not just one way for you to organize that your music. Now you can, with a digital system, you can think about the metadata. You can think about the artist name, their genre, the album name. You can organize it by all sorts of ways. So all this choice brings with it more complexity, and with that complexity requires you to think about, you know, um, how it is organized. And now, of course, iTunes is way different than it was 20 years ago, right? Because now you can download any song from anywhere around the world just like that. So now you have to think about, how do you go through millions, billions of music, right? It's not just your 40 albums. It's all this other stuff that's out there. And in addition to that, there's a whole bunch of other like movies, shows, freaking live audiobooks, lessons. All this stuff is now in this thing. And it doesn't all live in just iTunes, right? It's music app, the photos app, the this app, the that app, right? So now you have to think about, okay, what app is my music in? Oh, and it's devices, right? Is it? Oh, and it's in the cloud. So it's so interesting because we like to think of this as more convenient, as more choice. And yes, it is good in that aspect, but it's also very just more complex, right? And because of that, we have an information problem. We have information overload problem. We have all these ways of getting information, all this information that you can get. So that's why information architecture is so important, because now you have to figure out how to organize that information so that you can actually search through it. And then that's why the most successful companies of all time in the recent years, was Yahoo, then it was Google, right? Because the whole purpose was to organize that information. And so it's so interesting to me, because like my whole business idea is like basically rehashing that idea, is that we have all this information out there, but Google doesn't cut it anymore. It's more complicated than that. You can't just search what you want. Um, a lot of times you don't know what to search for. A lot of times, even if you search, you might not get what you expected to get, right? And so I'm thinking that we're coming to a point we have to once again reorganize our entire internet to see how it works, so you have a better way to access that information. Because it's like I was thinking this in my head the other day, is like we have a Niagara Falls of information. Like, right? All the information we have today is absolutely crazy. And getting what you want to try and decide, how to improve your life, or how to find music, or how to, get the career that you want to get, whatever, right? If you have any question for how to improve your life, trying to use the internet to do that now is like trying to get a glass of water from the Niagara Falls. Like it's it doesn't work. You get so overloaded with all this stuff and you just like you don't know what's what, you know. Um and sure you might find some gems in there that really resonates with you, but the majority of the time it's just like, oh my gosh, I don't know, whatever, right? You might stick on some of the first couple search terms or find some videos online from somebody else that has curated a lot of that stuff from you that works with you. That's why reviews and curation is so important, because another human who you feel like, somewhat similar to you, is able to, reduce some of that information overload. So it's easier for you to have an idea of how you can go about learning what you want to learn. So it's just so interesting because I did not expect to like have these connections when I was reading this book. I started reading this because I need to learn more about information architecture so I could be a better designer for interaction design and stuff like that. But it's just like every time I hear more about design, there's always lessons about the world in general, about humans, about reality, about all this stuff. And it's just so fascinating. So I knew how to make a video on that. So I might end it there. Maybe I'll pause it and keep reading. So like I said, I was just in the beginning, but I knew I had to just share some of my thoughts on here. It's amazing, man. This is another reason why I want to make this whole becoming a techno wizard thing and trillionaire thing, is just to share my thoughts as I'm learning about things. Um, because there's not enough of that. But anyways, I think I had another thought that I want to share too when I was reading this. Oh yeah. So he had this example of the in Japan, is it Japan? No, South Korea, the supermarket chain Home Plus. They did a marketing campaign where they pasted like they just they pasted like a visual like a the supermarket shelves. Like I'm looking at this picture right here. It's crazy. They just put the supermarket shelves on like the subway walls. Like they took a picture, not a picture, but it's like a, like you see those ads on trains or in the wall, like a billboard, right? But it's not like a typical ad. It's just these supermarket shelves on the wall, and people going up there with their phones and scanning it, like the QR code on the thing, on the, like they have soda up here, milk, water, like groceries, just regular groceries, just pictures of them on the wall. And so they can scan it and order it while they're there. And then by the time they get home, it's delivered. So I'm just like, why don't we do that? I mean, obviously I know why. It's because our freaking mass transit system in America is stupid. It's just stupid. Most people don't use it very well. It's not as much as people driving, and people. It's just interesting though to see this. But this is a great example of how information is not just constrained to our devices anymore, right? And it wasn't before too. Like before computers, again, it was all physical. It was all like right there in front of you. It took a lot of effort to bring information together. And then with the age of computers, you had a way to digitize everything, right? But now it's going right back out, where because now we're having computers within our different devices, the quote unquote Internet of Things. And we have wearables and all this stuff. So now you can put information anywhere. You can put digital information anywhere. And so not only is that just like we were at before, where you had all this stuff out there and you had to understand it, but now you have an incredible amount of ways to manipulate that information, right? You have with this like digital supermarket thing, you can look through all these different types of sodas or drinks or whatever that's out there that you couldn't before. Like in the regular supermarket, you just constrained to those specific ones. But in the digital supermarket, you can have a however many drinks or flavors or whatever that's out there, and it's just a matter of scrolling through or searching or whatever to get that. And so with that increased amount of convenience comes also more complexity comes more trouble, more cost. Like I was thinking about in my head is that basically technology and progress always comes with a cost, right? This is the problem with capitalism and progress in general. Not as a bad problem, but it's a problem. It's a factor that we need to realize is that progress comes at a cost. And we have to consider what is the importance of that cost, or what is the is that a good cost or a bad cost, basically is what I'm trying to get at here. So what I mean by that is for instance with information, right? With the ability to, let's go back to the music thing, with the ability to have the world's music at your fingertips, to have access to millions and billions more songs than you will ever be able to hear in your lifetime in your fingertips, right? That massive amount of convenience, that's progress. But the cost of that is, number one, how you go through that information, how you go through that music, how do you find music that you actually want to listen to? Because yes, we have all the music in the world, but you don't like all the music in the world, right? You have a specific taste. So now you have to worry about, okay, how do you find what music works for you? Right? That's the cost of having more choice, is that now you have to make a choice. Now you have to figure out how to make that choice. And number two is the producer side, right? Is because it's so easy for people to get and share music or any information, you have to ask, okay, how do these people make money from making that music? Like it takes a lot of time and effort, energy, whatever, to make that music. And before, there was only one way to get that music. You either, or two ways, whatever. You either, you know, go to a concert and hear them live, or they had to like put a whole bunch of effort into making physical copies of, the vinyl, and you would buy that and that's it. You can't share it because there's no way to like share a vinyl unless somebody comes over your house. And so it's just a lot of friction. So of course, anybody that wanted to listen to your music on the go or like in their own home would have to buy that vinyl, and that the artist can get a piece of that. But now with digital, music or whatever, anybody, after you do all the effort of making that music, you can just share it out. And if it gets leaked, now a whole bunch of other people can just rip that music and share with everybody else, and you would never get, a piece of that because nobody else bought it. Maybe if a small amount of people bought it, but most people heard it for free. And so that's the cost of this progress. And so we really have to think about, okay, if we have more access to information, if we have more access to this type of technology or that type of technology, what cost? At what cost? And we have to really sit down and think about that and design our technology, our solutions around that, because then we can make sure, because maybe if we would have thought about this before, like really thought about this, maybe we could have figured out something like NFTs, way before now. um Granted, some parts of NFT, maybe, I don't know, maybe parts of NFTs would not have been possible with older types of computers. But I don't know, maybe we could have figured out some sort of way to, encrypt it or whatever, so that we can spread good quality music without having it ripped off, so that artists can get paid. Or maybe we could have figured out a way to cut out the labels. I don't know. But my point is that if we actually think about the impact, this technology would have once we are creating it, or before we create it, as we're testing it out and putting it out there, or before we put it out there, then we can more responsibly use it. We can more responsibly, produce it. And that's what I'm really taking away from this so far, just in the beginning, right? Is that we have to think about it. It just requires some help. Like he says, his last sentence here, Mario's going to need a lot of help from the people who design these products and services. So yeah, you can't just, I mean, you can, that's what we've been doing in the last couple of decades. Just put out new technology and new resources, in the interest of convenience and stuff like that. But we really have to think about this, because now, especially as we're coming with technology that is more and more powerful, right? That is able to get more and more data. Because, like he pointed out here too, we have these wearable information that can read your biometrics, right? They know your heartbeat, your I don't know, whatever. They know all sorts of information about you. And so now we have to think about, okay, what happens when anybody can get access to this information? Can people use this for harm? Can Or even if not, like even in the best case scenario, what do you do with that information? Like, okay, you can hear your heartbeat and your freaking the your glucose levels or whatever. So what do you do with that information? How do you consume it? How do you share it? How do you know make sure you're using it to the best interest? Because if you don't think about that, then people are gonna be like, "Oh, your glucose level is high. That means instantly, oh, you eating too much sugar or whatever." And they can prescribe the wrong solution, and that can be fatal, right? Like, you hear this all the time with diets, um, where we have this idea that a certain type of diet is a good diet, right? Low fat, for instance, or um, there's these other ones, but low fat is a big one, right? Like for So I'm kind of tired, but for a long time, since like what, the 70s or 80s, we had this idea that low fat is good. Like, you have to cut out fat out of your diet. Um, when in reality, fat is like, you need fat. It keeps, gives you energy and stuff like that, right? There's only certain types of fat that may be bad for you if in certain contexts, right? But that nuance was lost because we all of a sudden we had this data that, oh, fat causes this, that, and the other, and blah blah blah, and we just instantly went into creating technology and solutions for it, but we didn't look at the context, right? Or if you look at certain other ideas, theories around that, the sugar industry, cast some of that, some of that, I don't want to say straight lies, but some of that obfuscation where, they're trying to paint fat as the bad guy, when really sugar has been causing a lot of the problems that people have been suffering from. And so, yes, we have all this information, we can collect all this data about stuff, but what do you do with it? What is the context, right? So yeah, it's it's amazing. I love reading this kind of stuff. I love learning about it, and I really love, creating solutions about it. So at least that's what I want to do. um, so yeah, stay tuned for more of these. I like, this is nice talking about it. Helps me to retain some of the information, as well as hopefully to share that information with other folks. So yeah, thanks for listening, and as always, let me know in the comments or in my DMs or my email or wherever else I am in the metaverse, what your thoughts are, what you think about this information overload and information architecture, and how we can make a better world, so we're not like, sticking our hands in the Niagara Falls expecting to get a glass of water. um, yeah, thanks for listening, and have a good day or night. Bye bye.